For those companies that are invested in generative AI, one of the things that's been a concern is the cost issue.
With traditional IVR system, if you have 100 agents available, you can handle 100 calls only, right? You have to take the calls within certain time. With generative IVR systems, you don't have those restrictions. If you have 500 agents handling your calls within the call center, with generative AI, you can run your call center with 100 agents.
This episode of VUX World is brought to you by NLX. NLX is the enterprise conversational AI platform that is powering the AI solutions for some of the world's most loved brands, including United Airlines, that automate 64% of special requests through the NLX platform. Special requests are things like, let's say that you want to book a wheelchair for when you arrive at the airport, or you need something like that, some special sort of request that's outside the norm, if you like. And United Airlines is automating 64% of those requests through the Voice Plus solution. Now, the Voice Plus solution is whereby you would call a call center, and instead of going through the pain and hassle of automating this thing from end to end in the call center and dealing with all of the work and all of the expense and all of the integrations that's required to do that, instead you just text a link to an online self-service portal for the customer to serve themselves. But the AI agent on the phone stays on the phone and coaches the user through the experience. The success rate is through the roof. The effort of getting it deployed is far quicker than any other IVR-based or AI-based phone solution. And so it is absolutely fantastic. If you want to find out more about that, you can visit nlx.ai. We actually did a webinar on this specific thing as well, so you can go to vux.world/webinars if you want to find out more about that particular solution. But if you want to find out more about NLX, then go to nlx.ai. That is nlx.ai. Thank you, NLX, for sponsoring VUX World. The following is a conversation with Satish Barot, who is the CEO at Klearcom. Now, Klearcom has made its name and reputation for testing and quality assurance services for IVR solutions. Now, most organizations, we might be a bit disconnected from the real world on this podcast because we spend all of our time immersed by AI, and I'm sure you do as well. But the rest of the world, unfortunately, isn't at the same place as us. Most IVR systems, most contact centers in the world globally still rely on the DTMF, press 1 for this, press 2 for that type of solutions. And that is what Klearcom tests and makes sure that your solutions in that IVR world have sufficient quality and pass your standards. Now, inevitably, the contact center is changing, and generative AI and machine learning is well and truly infiltrating the contact center environment. And most organizations are at least aware of the fact that generative AI could transform their contact center, many of which have actually been experimenting and exploring and even have deployed some Gen AI solutions in the IVR. 2025 is apparently the year of voice, if you believe what you read. That's never usually actually the reality, but there's a lot more interest in voice this year. Certainly, I think that right now it's reminiscent of kind of like 2020 or 2019 when Amazon Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant were really popular. COVID came around and a lot of contact centers started implementing machine learning, NLU-based systems to deal with the increase in demand over COVID. And then we kind of like quietened down a little bit as ChatGPT came around. Everyone was very interested in chat and AI agents in the chat channel. It feels as though now voice is coming back around. And if you're going to be interested or you're going to do anything on the voice channel, then it's the same as a chat channel. You have to understand whether what you've done has integrity. You have to be able to test it. And especially when you operate in phone centers or phone lines that exist in the wild and can be dialed from any country and have to bounce around one network to another to get you connected, there's a whole load of issues that can arise during that process. And so having a way of testing your production infrastructure and your production systems is crucially important. So that is what this conversation with Satish is about. We discuss the challenges of Gen AI IVR solutions and deploying them and the importance of testing. What kind of things do you need to test? How often should you test? And the whole kind of process around quality assurance of Gen AI IVR systems. I'm not even really sure that IVR is the right term for them now. AI-enabled contact centers, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe it's a better way of saying it. But anyway, this conversation is definitely of interest for you if you are interested in exploring voice AI in the call center and how to make sure that your solution does what it's supposed to do every single time. Without further ado, this is Satish Barot of Klearcom on VUX World. Satish Barot, welcome to VUX World, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, Kane. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and it is a pleasure to be on your show. And I'm looking forward to a meaningful conversation around Gen AI and Gen AI-based IVR systems.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Likewise. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me. I know it's probably a little bit late where you are, or getting on now where you are, but I appreciate that. No, I think that the timing of this is pretty good actually, because there is, I think, in 2025 certainly being a lot more interest in voice as a channel. You know, it was kind of like very much the thing when Alexa was around and the COVID happened. Loads of call centers were thinking about voice. Some obviously went down the messaging channel and stuff like that. But it seems as though generative AI has kind of got to a place where, you know, people are getting happy with it. It's getting better. And 2025 at the beginning of the year was professed to be the year of voice. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with you. In fact, you know, people are used to Alexa, Siri, and now they expect the same sort of customer experience on voice channels as well. And that is the reason I think, you know, Gen AI-based IVR systems will take over the traditional IVR systems. I don't see that happening overnight, but you know, I do see why one should move from traditional IVR systems to Gen AI-based IVR systems.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, whether it happens overnight, I don't know. I mean, lots of companies have gone down the route already with, you know, AI-based IVRs and self-service IVRs from the NLU days and stuff like that. So it's like already underway in many areas. But I think that, I mean, I don't know about you, but even in 2017, I was thinking like the writing is on the wall. It's obvious. Everything is going to be AI based and it's going to happen overnight. It hasn't happened overnight at all. And I don't really know why. What do you think?
You know, it's a relatively new tech, generative AI, I would say. It is not mature. Again, I would say, you know, so people are taking step-by-step approach. They don't want to move everything straight away from your normal IVR system to Gen AI IVR system and then face with challenges. So what they do is, you know, they implement Gen AI system in some part of their IVR systems, or they would have a kind of hybrid model where they would run Gen AI and you know, the traditional IVR system side by side, see the performance, you know, try to improve the Gen AI system based on the feedback they receive from their callers, from their customers, from their other stakeholders. And yeah, this is how this is going to work.
And what's Klearcom's kind of interest in this then? Like, for those that don't know Klearcom, what is Klearcom and what do you do and what's your interest in the Gen AI IVR kind of world?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. You know, so we saw a clear gap. We saw people complaining about numbers not working, the IVR systems not working. People complain about being there in a queue for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour on a call. So we decided to build something to taste those issues. For multinational companies having their telephony numbers in multiple countries, it is nearly impossible to taste their numbers are working. We can taste numbers are working. We are dialing within in country. We are making sure the messages we receive on a call are correct. The messages which we should receive during non-office hours are correct. When you are pressing one, or let's say, you know, you are speaking something on a call, the IVR system on the other side takes you to the right department or to the right menu. If you have pressed an option to talk to an agent, you can reach an agent, let's say within 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 60 seconds. And if you don't reach the agent within that stipulated time, we alert our customers. So in short, what we do is we test in-country toll-free numbers, toll numbers, IVR systems, agent quality, and agent response time for our clients.
Nice. And how long have you been going for?
It's been nearly 7 years. So we started discussing around this solution in 2018. We went into the market with our version 1 system, I can say, in 2020. And then we kept adding new features on it.
And what have you seen in that time since 2020 in terms of the change in the kind of market adoption of AI technologies? As I mentioned earlier, like some companies have, gone down the NLU route in the past, and they've got NLU-based IVR systems. They've tended to work fairly well for things like simple tasks like routing, but some do have like more end-to-end self-service options available and stuff like that. And then, of course, you've got the traditional press 1 for this, press 2 for that, DTMF kind of like IVR systems. What have you sort of seen in the market over the last 5 years in terms of adoption of both machine learning AI solutions and also Gen AI solutions? Is the tide shifting, or are things happening slower than we might expect?
The things are moving slowly. I would say people are still using traditional IVR systems. The reasons being they are easy to implement, easy to maintain. And as I said, generative AI is relatively new technology. I think we are in the first wave of generative AI, and implementing a solution on top of generative AI takes a lot of time, money as well. You have to make sure you have enough data to train your generative AI system before you can use that in the production. So mostly, I would say people are still using traditional IVR systems, but the shift I see from traditional IVR system to conversational AI systems and then generative AI systems. So, to your viewers who are not familiar with the traditional IVR system, conversational AI-based IVR systems, and generative AI-based IVR systems. Traditional IVR systems are menu-based. There is a structure behind it. When you dial a number, you are greeted with a message, pre-recorded message, I would say, with the options. And they would ask you to press something or say something on a call. So that's your traditional IVR system. Conversational AI-based IVR system is like they ask you to describe a problem, and then you describe a problem within a fixed set of words. I would say like 2 to 3 words, basically. For example, you dial a banking number, and they ask you to talk about your problem, and you say, stolen or lost credit card. So that's your conversational AI-based IVR system. Once you are happy with conversational AI-based IVR system, you should think about moving to the next generation system, that is generative AI-based IVR system, which is more natural, human-like conversation, and you can talk about your problem. You can ask open-ended questions when you are dealing with generative AI-based IVR system. You will be routed to the correct department in a really quickly, so the shift is happening, but as I said, that's gonna take some time. People would want to try the conversational AI systems and then generative AI-based systems first, get the feedback. If it is working fine, then move everything to generative AI-based IVR systems.
And you mentioned there that the traditional sort of like DTMF-based IVR systems are easy to implement, which is fair enough, but the experience is typically terrible, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
So
There are pros and cons. I would say, it's
what
fairly
are the pros
simple.
aside from speed of implementing it, because it's a fairly straightforward sort of solution? What are the pros of the DTMF-based IVR?
It's a matured technology. People are familiar with traditional menu-driven IVR systems. It's quite straightforward. You have to praise something, and then that takes you to the right department or right menu.
Yeah.
So those are the pros. Easy to implement, easy to maintain as well. So those are the pros. And if we talk about cons, I would say, let's say, you want to talk to someone about your problem and your problem is not there on their menu. So you have to go through multiple levels just to figure out your option within that menu. So that's the main disadvantage of the current traditional IVR systems.
Yeah, I think that there was a great piece of work done from Andrew Moorhouse. Shout out to Andrew Moorhouse. He was at, I think it might have been at Deloitte at the time. They did an analysis of Nationwide Bank, and they looked at IVR, live chat, and I think chatbot it may have been, and found that, I can't remember the exact numbers, so it's not going to be accurate, but it's something like the IVR had something like 90 kind of options. If you were to go through every single option, there's about 90 options there. The agents, when you get through to a live agent, they had something like 290 something disposition codes. So the difference between what the agents were trying to classify stuff as and what the IVR was kind of routing people through to, there was like a bit of a disconnect there. But then they found that the chatbot had something like 180 intents. So there's a disconnect between what the chatbot can handle and what the IVR system can handle versus what the agents are actually logging. But then when they actually did the analysis of all the conversations that the bank was having, they found that the bank had about 320 different intents. So I think many organizations are in this situation where the IVR is handling some but not all, because that's the limitations of that technology. The agents are kind of able to log some stuff, but again, not all, because they've only got a certain amount of time at the end of a phone call. The AI initiatives that organizations have been through in the past have only really focused on the top volume, high volume intents, and then the long tail kind of gets forgotten about or put to the bottom of the pile. So there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect between a business's ability to actually handle all customer needs across all channels. What kind of role do you think generative AI in the IVR will play in helping businesses basically cover the width and breadth of everything that customers need from them?
Right. Yeah. So, what you described is the hybrid approach I was talking about, where you run the traditional IVR systems and generative AI-based IVR systems side by side. But running a generative AI-based IVR system purely without any traditional IVR system, it has its own advantages. For example, with traditional IVR system, if you have 100 agents available, you can handle 100 calls only, right? You have to take the calls within certain time, let's call it office hours. With generative IVR systems, you don't have those limitations, restrictions. You can take calls anytime, right? They don't get tired. They don't go on their lunch break or dinner break to save. And, you get your issue, your complaint resolved within a couple of seconds time, I would say, because you don't have to go through the the multi-level IVR menu. You just describe your problem, the generative AI system running in the background would take that input, go through the databases or CRM systems, and then give you an answer. So everyone is happy when you are using generative AI-based IVR systems.
And I think most IVR systems, as you mentioned, they are kind of like a routing capability, aren't they, really? It's just like trying to get you through to the right team, trying to get you through to the right department. Some of them over time have been kind of like made an attempt to deliver some kind of self-service capability. So, for example, like a very simple example would be something like, let's say, for example, you call DHL, and maybe they have a traditional IVR system which asks you to put in your tracking number. And if you type in your tracking number, it will then tell you where your parcel is or something like that. Very simple kind of automation. So it kind of, what I'm trying to get to is that, like, they were traditionally routing-based systems, taking you to the right people. They then started to add some degree of self-service stuff into them, but I think that's where the real limitations were hit. The NLU capabilities have gone one further than that, so they can route things a bit more efficiently because they can understand a wider breadth of customer utterances, and you're having the customer explain what they need rather than trying to have them guess how you've grouped it based on your organizational labels that you've put in the menu. But I think what the NLU phase did was it brought about even more automation, as in putting the actual service delivery in the conversation in the IVR itself. And generative AI, with its ability through retrieval augmented generation to answer a lot more questions, through kind of like the agentic sort of approach, or automating more things over time. So it seemed, my observation is that the role of the IVR has already changed and will continue to change from a routing-based capability to actually a service delivery medium. I don't know if you would kind of concur or see things differently to that.
No, I completely agree with you. The NLU-based IVR systems have helped a lot. But the limitation with NLU-based IVR systems are you are dealing with limited set of intents. With generative AI, like, the caller can talk about any issue, and you don't even need to have a defined set of words, which you normally use with NLU-based IVR systems.
Yeah. You can cover a lot more breadth of conversations, definitely. You might want to do something about limiting that, depending on the type of company you are. But yeah, so where does that leave Klearcom then? So you've got a lot of experience in testing the traditional IVR systems and ensuring that they have integrity, which I would think that's probably still a growth area, and probably will be a growth area for a while, because as many businesses, are a bit slow maybe to get towards the Gen AI IVR kind of thing. Lots of companies have got IVR systems still today and probably not probably aware of any issues that they might have if they're not doing any kind of quality assurance or anything like that. So I imagine that's that kind of like that part of the business will continue to flourish. But I suppose the longer term of more businesses moving more towards kind of self-service based generative AI IVR systems, that then kind of like, presents either a challenge or an opportunity for Klearcom. I would think of it an opportunity. I don't know how you're kind of perceiving it.
Correct. Yeah. So we have, solutions to cover both the areas, traditional IVR systems, and the other area that includes conversational AI and generative AI-based IVR systems. So with conversational AI or generative AI-based systems, we have developed a solution where you can check the accuracy of the conversational AI or generative AI-based solutions. So you ask some questions which are not in the scope and see how the generative AI-based system responds to those questions. We also check how much time it takes to just respond to your query. And what we do is we would use different accents, male voice, female voice, high pitch voice, low pitch voice, slow voice, fast voice. We would add some sort of noise as well in the background and see how the uh, generative AI-based system responds to it. So we already have this solution, to test generative AI IVR systems.
That's interesting. And how do you go about judging accuracy then? Is it that, for example, if I was to set up a test, would I need to explain what I expect as far as an output is concerned?
Correct. Yeah, you just need to create your test case. Let's take an example. You are dialing a bank's number and you say, I have lost my credit card. So you create a test case. Your question is, lost my credit card. And the response you should receive should give you some steps to something like, when you say, I have lost my credit card, the response should be something in this line. Okay, I got your problem. Do you want me to block your credit card ending with, whatever number? So what we do is we match that response with the question which we have asked on the call and see whether that response matches with the question or not. If not, we alert our customers. We also check the quality. So audio quality, basically. So whatever audio we receive from the Gen AI system, whether it is up to the mark or not, so we give a score out of 5. And if the score is, let's say, poor, less than 2, again, we would alert our customers. We would send like thousands of calls to the generative AI-based system and they see how it behaves. Because when you put the system under load, it might behave a little bit differently.
Right.
You might see some issues when you add a background noise in a response. So this is what we do in Klearcom to test Gen AI-based IVR systems.
Right. So let's just make sure I understand this then. So you've got kind of like, I suppose, some technical testing in terms of like, is the system functioning? For example, load testing, throwing a bunch of volume at it, see how it kind of copes with that. Audio quality. Is it audio quality? Is that audio quality of the input that you're sending to the models, or audio quality of the speech that's coming back?
Which we are receiving on the call.
Right. So that's the spoken text-to-speech voice
Correct.
coming back.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then background noise essentially is that you would, am I right in thinking that this system would be something whereby you would simulate calls using your own agent and your own text-to-speech capabilities? You would dial a number, have a simulated conversation going on, and in those simulated conversations, you're using different accents, different voices. You're adding some kind of like distortion and interference into the audio to try and see whether the speech recognition systems pick it up and things like that. Am I correct there?
Correct. Yeah, we try to interrupt the audio as well and see how it behaves. We try to replicate the actual caller's experience by, adding a background noise of busy street, or if you are dialing from a train, we would add a train noise in the background and see how the other system behaves.
Right. And is this something that you would do? Because to me, this sounds like something that could be quite useful in the sort of design phase of working on these solutions.
Correct.
You want to test, for example, selecting speech recognition providers. You might want to do, for example, if you are, let's say that you are the AA road breakdown recovery service, yeah? Most of the time, the people calling you are going to be probably on the side of a very busy motorway because that's when they need your help.
That's good, yeah.
So it might be useful to try and get some audio of the ambient noise that would occur when you're stood on the side of a busy road to then test whether or not, as you're going through the design process of your solution, to see whether or not different speech recognition models handle that stuff better or worse.
Right.
So are you saying that that's what this is for? Is it's bringing the testing into the design phase, or is this a live testing thing?
Correct. Yeah. What we have is not to test within the network. What we try to do is, we want to send the input through the traditional telephony system, through the fixed line or through the GSM. Because if you test it within your network, it might work. But when your call goes through the, different networks, when I dial, let's say, A's number, the call will go through different networks. And that would affect the quality as well. So what I say on the call might not be conveyed to the other end with the same quality.
Right.
So this is the reason, you should test your IVR systems through the actual telephony lines and not within your network.
Right. So this solution isn't a solution that you would use for quality assurance during the development. It's something that you would use to maintain quality of the production system.
Correct.
Right. And how do you do that then if you're testing as these calls get routed through various different networks? Are you able to sort of like monitor the different choke points within that network as the call is coming through and being bounced around? Or how do you sort of do that stuff?
We don't have control over the carriers networks, I would say. What we, as I say, try to do is we try to replicate the caller's experience. Let's say you have number in UK. Someone dialing your number within the UK, what sort of experience they receive, that's what we try to replicate. We don't worry about what's happening when the call goes from the caller's carrier to the destination's carrier, and there might be multiple hops between caller's carrier and destination's carrier. We don't worry about it. What we focus on is when I dial your number, what sort of experience I'm getting in terms of audio quality, in terms of when I praise something, when I say something, when I describe my problem, whether I'm getting the right response or not. If I'm calling from, let's say, BG Street, from the restaurant, whether that affects my input and you respond in a different way. That's what we test for our clients.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah, and if I was a client, would I have to specify the kind of things I want to test? Like, let's say, for example, if I am the AA and I want to run a test to see whether or not this system in production performs well aside a busy road, would I need to specify that? Do you need to do something specific, or is it kind of like you just do a bunch of different testing with different types of background noise and stuff like that, and you know?
We can handle both ways, so we have a Klearcom portal where customers would come and schedule their test. They would do regression testing as well. So this is not a, one-off testing where you dial your number and then you say, okay, everything is fine and I don't need to do anything. We have customers, they would dial their numbers every hour, every day, just to ensure the lines are working fine, their IVR systems are working fine, their Gen AI-based IVR systems are working fine. The responses which we should receive, the caller should receive, are within a stipulated time. So when you discuss about a credit card issue or lost or stolen credit card, it shouldn't take like 15-20 seconds to respond back to your query. So that's what we do in a discovery phase as well as in the regression phase.
Right, I'm with you. And for those companies that are investing in generative AI, one of the things that's been a concern, aside from the obvious hallucination issue, is the cost issue.
Correct.
Now, the cost, if you look at actually the data, the cost is coming down significantly. There's like a 10x decrease in inference cost over the last kind of 3 years or so. So the cost is definitely coming down. However, the cost is still a concern because depending on how you've implemented your solution, you might have a solution where you're making 7 API calls for every one turn of the conversation if you want to go through various guardrails and checks and stuff like that. I think that the jury's still out in terms of how cost-effective Gen AI systems are at scale compared to the traditional IVR stuff.
Obviously, there is a cost factor. You have to pay something upfront. You have to pay something to maintain your Gen AI IVR system. But look at the benefits as well. If you have 500 agents handling your calls within the call center with generative AI, you probably don't need those 500 agents. You can run your call center with 100 agents and you can automate some stuff. And if needed, you can hand up the call to the agent. Now you are not restricted by the time as well. You can run your call center operations 24/7 without any issues. So in a long run, there will be a lot of benefits, cost benefits as well, I would say. Of course, you have to invest something upfront and, just to maintain the systems, Gen AI systems.
And where do you think that kind of like, I mean, it's good that Klearcom is looking at this because I think that there's definitely a gap. There's a gap all over in terms of testing of these systems, quite honestly, from the design and development phases through to kind of like live in production monitoring and QA and stuff like that. So I'm glad to sort of like hear that this is what you've been thinking about. Where do you think that your kind of competition is in this kind of space? I don't necessarily know of that many other companies that do something specifically like this, but I can imagine a few who might. For example, some of the CCaaS providers may consider doing something like that. Some of the, the Twilios of the world, these kind of like cloud providers may do something. Is there any competition? Is this a competitive market at the moment, or where do you see that coming from, if anywhere?
See, there are competitors, but they are not testing traditional IVR or generative IVR systems the way we do. We have telephony lines, fixed lines, and GSM lines in more than 100 countries at the moment. If you have to dial a toll-free number, you have to be in that country. Your line must originate that call within that country to dial a toll-free number. So this is the main thing, like we don't restrict our customers with languages. We offer like many languages our customers can use to test their IVR system. So in that sense, what we do, I don't see many of our competitors doing it that way in a cost-effective way and in a more user-friendly way.
Yeah. What about your clients then? So obviously you've got one of the advantages I think that you have of moving into this space is that you've already got clients. They're already testing their traditional IVR stuff. If you play the cards right, then as they start moving into the generative sort of space, then you're already there. They can just kind of start consuming the slightly different service that you have. How are your customers currently thinking about the impact of generative AI? Because we've mentioned that adoption of the IVR stuff is probably slower than we may have expected if we did expect it to be fast. Are they thinking about it as being slow-moving, incremental type of technology, or do they think of this as being a really transformative technology?
As I mentioned, this is a gradual change. Okay, so many of our clients, they are using traditional IVR systems, but in the background, they are running some trials for generative AI-based IVR systems. And in fact, they are taking our help to test their generative AI-based IVR systems before they can go live with those systems. So, we are helping them move from traditional IVR systems to generative AI-based IVR systems.
And so for me, I'm unsure whether businesses really understand where this is kind of heading. So, for example, the traditional IVR that routes people to people, basically connects one person to one person, that's a one-to-one relationship. And the contact center has always been a one-to-one relationship because you can only have one conversation with one person at the same time. But then the NLU started to change that because it changes it into a one-to-many relationship because you can have lots of conversations at the same time. Now, the effectiveness of the automation capabilities for NLU systems, I suppose, is up for debate, although it's been, good enough case studies on that. Generative AI and its ability to hold really natural sounding conversations, if you can get the kind of process part right and the integration part right and the data part right, it potentially there is a world in which everything that someone calls your contact center for is being handled by the Gen AI. And therefore, it's not going to handle everything. You're still going to have some things going through to people. But I mean, fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I think for me, the role of the contact center is completely different. In fact, it's a shadow of its former self. And I'm not necessarily sure whether companies understand that that's the direction we're heading in.
I agree with you. Down the line, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, people would be using generative AI in their IVR systems more and more, just to handle more and more calls, not to be dependent on the agent's availability, to resolve the issues quickly. You don't have to keep someone waiting in a queue to get the issue resolved for them. So down the line, yes, I do see benefits of running with generative AI-based IVR systems than traditional IVR systems. And not only we at Klearcom, our clients, our customers, they also see those benefits. And this is the reason, even though they are running their IVR on traditional systems, but they are testing generative AI or conversational AI side by side and see what sort of load they can move from their traditional IVR systems to Gen AI-based IVR systems.
Mm. And you would recommend that, would you then, to do that kind of like side by side comparison?
I do see that happening. Yes, of course.
Yeah. And for example, if someone was to use a service like Klearcom to do that testing in the production kind of environment, one of the things that if it was me, I would be thinking about is I would love to be able to do testing to that extent and that degree as often as I would want. Maybe every evening we send a bunch of calls to whatever. But then is that going to kind of inflate my usability numbers, if that makes sense?
No,
Does that
normally,
create a bit different picture?
when you have a number, you don't buy just one channel. You are buying multiple channels from your carriers. So a couple of calls from Klearcom daily wouldn't make a difference. And with traditional IVR systems, I see you are limited by your agent's availability. But with Gen AI-based IVR systems, I don't see someone testing your numbers to make sure your numbers are up, your systems are working fine would make any difference.
And is there any, we've been speaking, I think, pretty enthusiastically about the generative AI IVR kind of like future. Obviously, if it was that easy, everyone would have done it already. And you're mentioning there that a lot of your clients are just taking it one step at a time and doing some sort of like concurrent testing and stuff like that. What are the things that would prevent a business from, apart from the obvious like hallucination risk or whatever, like what are the challenges that you're seeing when businesses are trying to get a Gen AI IVR off the ground?
Privacy, I would say, is a big concern when using generative AI-based systems. You don't know how your Gen AI system is handling personal or sensitive information, where it is being stored. So you have to make sure your generative AI system handles the personal and sensitive information in a proper way. If it needs to store it somewhere, it stores it in a secured storage, in an encrypted fashion. So apart from privacy, I don't see any major issue. GenAI-based systems.
And is there any
Of
other?
course, data as well, training your system. So like you have to make sure you keep tuning your system, training your system to provide more relevant answers to the callers.
And is there any other things that, if I was a business, I'm implementing a Gen AI IVR solution, I'm interested in sort of like testing capabilities, are there any other considerations that I should have?
Yeah, I would say, start small and scale smart. So you don't need to move everything to Gen AI based system. I would say try some simple options with Gen AI first and then see how it works. Get the feedback from the stakeholders. Try to improve your system. Try to get more and more data and train the system. The second thing I would say is run both the systems side by side. Let the generative AI handle some task that it can automate. And if customer needs to talk to an agent, then transfer that call to the agent. Focus on the customer experience rather than technology. You don't need to buy fancy technology to run generative AI. Just see whatever you have is able to fix your customers' issues, whether that will make your customer happy. If the answer is yes, go with it. Don't wait for some cool tools or cool technologies.
Nice. That's a really good point. Yeah, I think that I was at a conference the other week, Boost Camp, and what was really great there, the takeaway from that, really, if I was to summarize it, is that there is a lot more urgency in businesses now, and the demand for speed is really increasing. That's not to say that you can be irresponsible and just, do whatever you want, but the need for speed is definitely kind of occurring, which puts more kind of like weight on good testing for me. I think, if you've got to get to market fast, you've got to be able to assure that what you're doing is actually working. So I suppose it's a good time to be Klearcom.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And as I said, it's not only about testing with the normal call flow where you say something and you expect the line will be clear without any issues to pass that input from the caller to your Gen AI based system. So you have to test through different accents, Irish accents, Indian accents, British accents, US accents, and see how your system behaves.
Yeah, definitely. And what's kind of exciting you then, apart from these testing capabilities, like when you look at Gen AI or AI kind of more broadly, what's some of the stuff that's kind of really exciting you about some of the recent developments?
So particularly at Klearcom, we are not focusing on voice only. We are working on to include other channels as well. We are going to develop something for chatbot testing. Again, not traditional chatbot systems which you see on your web page, but app-based chatbot systems, web-based chatbot systems, generative AI-based chatbot systems. And on top of it, we are also working on some virtual agent that can connect with your system and handle the calls from Klearcom, automate some stuff. So when there is a call from Klearcom, you don't need an actual agent to answer the call. Our virtual agents would answer the call, perform some steps, collect some data within your network to ensure there are no issues in your network when the audio quality was poor, when the call was made through the Klearcom line.
Nice.
So yeah, there are exciting features, applications coming from Klearcom in near future.
Nice. Yeah, Good timing. I think that Gen AI is now at a point where it's ready for enterprise deployment. I think it probably will improve. The models will improve, but I think that what they are now is good enough to get a lot of really good work done. But I do think that the gap at the moment, I've said this on a number of podcasts and I've said it on a number of talks that I've given, the gap at the moment is absolutely testing. Testing and design, testing and development, testing and production. That's where the big kind of like gaps are. So hopefully that's where Klearcom can play.
Yeah, that's what you should do. Like before you put everything in production, you should get it tested properly. Through the proper channels as well. I would say not only within your network, outside your network as well. If you are planning to run your generative AI system through fixed line, get it tested through the fixed line, through the mobile. So that's also important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Satish, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ken. Yeah. It was great talking to you.
Likewise. Good luck with it all. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate that as well. And we'll see you again on the next one. Cheers, Satish.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.